Okay, what's going on, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of Energized. Ross, introduce the guest, man.
We have MMA's #1 podcast on with us today. We have weighing in the blue corner. We have the man who wrote. We have the man who wrote the rule book in MMA, the MMA referee GOAT, that is Big John McCarthy. And in the red corner, we have Strikeforce, UFC, and Bellator veteran Josh the Punk Thomson, the only man to get Nate Diaz out of the octagon. How you doing, guys?
Doing good. How are you guys doing?
Man.
Lads,
I'm glad that you have come to grips with the fact that we are the #1 MMA podcast out there. Big John, how does that make you feel to hear somebody else say it, not just us?
Come on, baby. It gets no better than when they say that.
well, once Conor McGregor says it, that's certified, you know?
Oh, there you go.
Done. Oh,
Well, here-
man.
Okay, we'll just go over a couple of things before we get into the show. Obviously, we have the two lads on. This is episode 300 of Energized. If you are new to the show, make sure to like and subscribe. This is a banger. We're coming out episode 300 with the best podcast in the world. Ross, how happy are you, man?
Man, I am absolutely buzzing. This podcast is brought to you by KB Nutrition. They fuel the lads. They give the lads some great nutritious meals. And also, if you are here and you have not seen the Weighing In podcast, head over. Episode 123 is out there now. And they just talk about the UFC and Derek Lewis's big win over Curtis Blades. And they talk about something that we're going to get into because I'm interested in Usman versus Nick Diaz as well. Basmo, what's your t-shirt say?
This is Al Calzoni. He's been a fan of the show for a while. He actually lives near you, Josh, as well. He's the Michael Jordan of cheesesteaks as well. But,
Really? Michael Jordan of cheesesteaks, huh?
Yeah.
Is he own a business? Is he
Yeah.
own a business?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Calzoni. Calozi. That's it exactly. Calozi. Sorry, excuse me.
We'll get him to drop into your DMs for a free cheesesteak sandwich afterwards.
Definitely.
You mean calzone? You mean like a calzone
No,
or
it's
Cologne?
Calozi.
Oh, you're gonna have to send it to me. I want to check it out. If it's over here by me in the Bay Area.
We will do. And also, we want to give a massive shout out to the podcast Dave as well. He's doing great things, and he's representing you two lads well.
Who?
Podcast Dave. Do you ever hear of him? No.
We don't talk about him.
What? The Scottish young Jamie.
It is
Yes,
the Scottish young Jamie.
It is the Scottish young Jamie. Yeah.
Yes, that's so great. So guys,
Well-
tell us what's going on. What's going on over there where you guys are at? How's your lockdowns? What's going on with that?
I'll be honest with you, Josh. We are like the laughing stock of Europe. We are in like what we call level 5 lockdown till
Oh, geez.
May, I think now, and like our numbers aren't even getting any better. So like, it's all fairly doom and gloom over here.
But we're keeping it energized, man.
Yeah, we're keeping it energized,
Yeah.
and it could be worse. Like
Yeah.
we do have power. It could be worse. We could be in Texas.
Boom. There you go.
Yeah, always look on the bright side of life, you know.
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Russ,
you guys,
take it away,
you guys
man.
are a little rough, buddy. You guys are a little rough.
No, man, it's just truthful. They're sitting, they know what cold is in Ireland, and they know what it's like to not have power like Texas. So you can bring your F-150 up to your thing, plug it in so you can have some heat.
You better
Hey,
believe
dude,
it,
dude,
Big
dude.
John.
But the cool thing about I guess not having power is equivalent to like not having internet, right, Big John?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Big John, I can see you. I can see you crystal clear. If anyone's got the shaky internet on here, it's the Punk.
Oh, thank you so much, Ross. You know the truth.
Oh,
But guys,
guys.
let's call a spade a spade. Let's get right into it. UFC heavyweight division is after getting very spicy very quick. Derek, my balls are hot. Lewis is after coming in there and changing the game. He knocked out Curtis Blades in the second round over the weekend. I called it last week. I said you can't bet against that man's power, and he's after making himself. He's beat, I think, as it stands, the #1 ranked, the #2 ranked, and the #5 ranked UFC heavyweight. Does he not deserve a title shot? If John Jones didn't exist with this heavyweight move, wouldn't he be a clear-cut #1 contender for the belt?
Absolutely not.
No?
Absolutely
Oh.
not. No. Come on. You got to be honest about this. People are forgetting that Derek Lewis did have a title shot. He fought Daniel Cormier for the title. and showed that he was lacking in an area of wrestling that Cormier was able to expose. As far as, it's not that he was the first one to do it, but he was successful in taking him down and ends up getting the fight. But you've got guys, Francis Ngannou deserves a title shot.
I'm not saying take him out though. I'm saying after. He's not next in line.
Oh yeah,
After.
he's absolutely coming up in there, no doubt about it. But you got to look. He's got to say, John Jones can skip everyone, and it's righteous because you got to look at the run that he's had as the light heavyweight king, and to move up and get that title shot right away, it's legitimate and it makes sense. But Francis Ngannou is right there with him as far as he deserves another shot. Let's see if he learned from that first loss that he had with Stipe, exactly how he's improved and what he's done, so those same things that happened in that fight don't happen again.
What do you think, Josh?
Yeah. What about you, Josh?
Well, I think we're gonna see. I think John Jones is gonna cut the line, which he deserves to, like John and I were talking about. I think, but we're gonna see how the Rosenstruck fight plays out with Ciryl Gane, and I think if John's gonna insert himself into that middle there, and take the next title shot, which he should, if he is going to stay at heavyweight, or they get the money worked out and the situation worked out for him to go ahead and get there, then I would think you put Derek Lewis against the winner of Ciryl Gane and Rosenstruck to see who fights next after John Jones. Then that keeps both of those guys busy, and then it also allows John Jones his opportunity to fight for the title. If it's against Francis or it's against Stipe, whoever loses that fight is going to have to go a little bit down to like number 5. And I'm not saying they're going to lose in ranks that much. I'm just saying they're going to have to wait until after probably Derek Lewis and Rosenstruck or Ciryl Gane end up fighting to see who they're going to have to fight out of that, maybe, or the winner of that fights for the title and the two losers fight each other to see who is going to fight for the title after that. Like John's always said this, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, is that the UFC has like a little bit of a format. Normally the two losers will fight each other, so they end up with one of them being a winner. So then they don't have to worry about two guys going on long runs and potentially losing a little bit of that star power. So they have two guys that have losses. They fight each other. When they fight each other, one of them is guaranteed to come out on the win. And when that happens, they're going to move them on up, and the other one will stay kind of where they're at or drop down a little bit more. And they'll just keep matching that other person up with probably another loser to see if one of them can get another win. So you keep following that track there, but I think that's kind of a good format for them, with Derek Lewis and fighting the winner of Rosenstruck and Ciryl Gane, and then Ciryl Gane will probably fight the loser of whoever was the champion before. So if it was John Jones versus Stipe, or if it was Stipe losing and then Stipe going down to fight Ciryl Gane, potentially making another run back of the title, but it kind of makes for a very interesting situation in that heavyweight division. Because John and I were talking on weighing in just 2 weeks ago, John, and I was saying, man, the heavyweight division is just not doing it for me lately. You still got a lot of these older guys fighting. You've got Arlovsky fighting, Dos Santos fighting. I'm like, Overeem fighting. I'm like, it's just not doing it for me anymore. But then the young guys that showed up the other night, and then the young guys are going to come and fight again this weekend coming up. I'm telling you, it started to kind of tickle the butthole a little bit. I'm liking it.
Typical.
Well, I think Josh just matched every heavyweight up against each other over the next 6 to 12 months. But another big name coming out of this weekend's card is Tom Aspinall. What an absolute outrageous win. He outrageously lit Arlovsky up on the feet. He shot a beautiful double leg in the second. And then under Arlovsky, I've never seen someone give their back and give their neck so easily, especially someone who was a UFC heavyweight champion at one stage. But Tom Aspinall looks like he's the real deal, and he's got to be the hottest prospect out of all the heavyweights. Do you agree with that, guys?
I don't know if he's the hottest prospect out of all heavyweights as far as he is with people that didn't know him. But if you've followed Tom and his career, he's good. And he has really done a great job of taking the losses that he had and taking notes from those and saying, I need to fill these holes. And he's really done that well. And his stand-up has become so much better. His ground game he's a monster on the ground. People have no idea how good Tom Aspinall is. You don't get heavyweights that are really good off their back. You just, and Josh and I talk about it all the time. And, it's not a place that heavyweights want to be. And I'm not saying that he wants to be there, but even, he looks like Frank Mir, and he does have a ground game similar to Frank Mir, which makes him dangerous for every heavyweight in the division. Because when you talk about guys that are good with their wrestling, there's not a whole lot of them. And then you talk about guys that on top of that have a good submission game. Now you're starting to really narrow down the field. And with his stand-up getting the thing that really impressed me in his fight with Arlovsky was how relaxed he was in the stand-up, how calm he was, how he was controlling the distance in the fight. He was the one deciding when the engagements would occur. He's just excelling at an exponential rate in his learning curve, and he's just getting better and better. So yeah, he's that guy that's right there in that, as I say, knocking on the door of the top 10. He should be right in that, let's say 12 to number 9 spot, somewhere in there. You should see Tom Aspinall. Now it's when he makes that next level change into that upper echelon.
Yeah, I think he could be the next British fighter to fight for a belt as well. Obviously depends on if Izzy leaves middleweight and goes up to light heavyweight. The UFC love nothing more than trying to get Darren Till into a title fight.
Yeah. Lads, what do you make of John Jones actually moving up into the heavyweight division as well? Like, who do you think actually poses the biggest threat against him? Because he's cleaned out the light heavyweight division, and that went sort of stale. But now there's some very interesting matchups. John, do you want to answer first? John?
Look for me, I think realistically it's just Francis Ngannou, and then and even Derek Lewis. I'll say Derek Lewis as well. Derek Lewis sure needs to work on his wrestling a lot more to stop John Jones' takedown. But like we saw, like we've been saying for the longest time, guys like Francis Ngannou and guys like Derek Lewis, with that amount of power that they have, you've got to be very cautious on how you approach your takedowns. And Curtis Blades found out the other night. Yeah. The other thing as well is when you're having these conversations about guys that hit hard and guys that can change the game with one shot, John, towards the end of his 205-pound career, right? He was getting hit a lot. He's getting hit a lot more. And I don't know if it was because he didn't really feel like he'd be hurt by those guys anymore. There was nothing there that those guys could do anymore. You can tell he kind of either he lost his motivation or he's just not the same fighter anymore. I'm hoping that this run up to heavyweight will invigorate him into making him a more energized fighter, like we saw when he fought Stephan Bonner and Shogun Rua and those guys back in the day. Will we see that John Jones again? Who knows? Because now you've got to be very careful with taking chances against guys that hit as hard as Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou, and that are, as we saw, very fast and explosive. Let me remind you, Francis Ngannou almost decapitated Overeem.
Yeah.
And Derek Lewis just on Saturday night just took Curtis Blades' soul. So when we're having these conversations, like John Jones can do all the spinning fancy stuff, but what happens when he gets clipped just accidentally and that he gets taken out? So it brings a new dynamic to the game. Will John be the old John, and will John be willing to take chances, or is John just going to try to wrestle them to death and get those wins? I think John takes a smart approach with the wrestling. But guys like Francis Ngannou are very athletic and a lot stronger than the guys at 205 and should be able to stop a takedown or two. And in the process, John Jones is going to get hit. And he's going to get hit like he's never been hit before. So there's a lot of questions to be answered of him going to heavyweight. But what do I think of it overall? I freaking love it, man.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
The reason why I love it is it's spicing things up. The 205-pound division now is set free from John Jones. And John Jones is about to go to heavyweight and lock that division down now for himself. If he can, is yet to be seen. But man, I'm excited to see if we're gonna see a new reinvigorated John Jones.
Big John, do you agree with that?
A lot of it I do, but there's certain aspects I think you need to think about. John Jones is an exceptional fighter, and I think his matchup with Stipe, first off, that is not an easy fight for him to win. No. Stipe's boxing is very technically clean. His stand-up is clean. His wrestling is good. His anti-wrestling. Look at Dan Cormier. In getting him down, he's popping back up. And people can sit there and say what they want. I know that John took Dan down, but John is not the wrestler that Dan Cormier was. So Stipe's got an outstanding wrestling defense. I think that Stipe matches up incredibly well with John, but I think he's the easier puzzle for John to figure out than you're looking at an Ngannou or a Lewis, because when you're taking a look at Francis Ngannou or Derek Lewis, either one, just like what Josh said, look at, they hit people and hurt them when they don't land in the right spot. They, Ngannou put not only Overeem's lights out, he put Rosenstruck's lights out fast, even with a shot that you go, that didn't land that clean. So he can hurt John at any point in the fight. Also, the other thing is both of those guys, and Ngannou's a little bit cleaner than Lewis, but they're both not technically clean in the stand-up. They throw from odd angles. They do things that make you, as their opponent, you're used to fighting guys that are technical. But when a guy does things that is not quite technical and is just kind of wild and crazy, it kind of makes you hold back. You got to be careful with them, and especially with the power that both of those guys possess. John's going to have his hands full. The step up in competition is not a step up in competition as far as total skill level, but the step up in competition when it comes to the ability to put your lights out, he is stepping into a world that he has never experienced before.
Ross, I'll ask you this question as well. No one really brings up the fact that John Jones has enough money to, like, he could retire. He doesn't have to go up and do this. Now, obviously, Conor McGregor has way more money, but he doesn't need to do it either. So, like, do you think the John Jones that is moving up, he's still, what do you sort of make of this? Because he can retire and live happily ever after right now.
I feel like John Jones is almost on a career revival. He's been through his trials and tribulations, and now he's trying to revive his career. He's trying to, leave the sport with a good name. And I think that John Jones has almost always fought to the level and ability of his opponents. The better opponent you give John Jones, the better performance you get out of John Jones. That's why I feel like, I don't mean to disrespect them, but like Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos, and maybe even Dominic Reyes, I felt like John overlooked those guys. He didn't want to rise to the occasion for them. But when he sees these guys like this, Francis Ngannou, Stipe Miocic, as John said, these guys are here to kill. And like Ngannou, he doesn't even want to spend a minute in the octagon with his opponent. He wants to get out there in under 60 seconds. He's gone in 60 seconds. And I honestly think John Jones is going to know that. And I'll be very interested to see the first 60 seconds of those fights. I'll be interested to see, does John do his crawl across the octagon or what way he comes out? But I think John Jones, he's going to have to be focused and switch on there for the full 25 minutes when he gets in there. And it's going to be exciting to see.
For it.
So I have one last question before we move off heavyweights. Big John, you've been in there with some of the all-time greats. But who do you feel that you've been in there with and you've seen hits the hardest out of all the heavyweights?
Oh my God. As far as heavyweights, wow, that's a good question. There's been several guys that they just hit hard, but I would say Francis Ngannou is the guy that when he hits you, now there's differences on the feet. Francis Ngannou is the scariest guy. Fedor is very close. Fedor's super fast with his hands. Fedor on the ground is the most damaging guy I've ever seen besides Derek Lewis. Now, Derek Lewis on the ground is a scary sumbitch. He hurts people because he just throws everything into it. And, those are the three guys I want to say, knockout power-wise, they're all incredible.
And one last thing I actually will say, just as we're talking about referees, I feel like Herb Dean unfairly got criticized this weekend about not stopping that fight soon enough. In fairness, it was a bit of a strange shot that he caught him with the uppercut, and then it was very Dan Henderson, Michael Bisping-esque. But, you can't actually, as the referee, be on top of the guys. You have to let them get in their scrambles, get their takedowns. He actually ran over and got over straight away. Derek Lewis just got those 2 punches in. Just a quick 2-second take on that, John.
Yeah. I look and, everyone thinks it's easy. And everyone thinks fighting, I can fight. Okay, you put the average man into a fight, he looks like a third grade schoolgirl. All right, that's how bad it looks. And people think that they understand refereeing. They have no idea. There's times, and Josh and I even went over this on our podcast as far as positioning and where you want to be. But there's times when you will actually take yourself out of what you think is the right technical, mechanical position to see something that you see going on And I think that's what, because Herb was on the side that he'd want to be. He went to the other side because I think he looked at, but blades fell away from him. And it makes it to where, hey, you can only react so fast. And, Herb doesn't jump in between guys like some referees do. They'll put, little Keith Peterson. He shoves his body in there like he's a gopher going between guys. Herb kind of uses his leg and his butt to push guys to the side. So everyone's got their own little style, but he did nothing wrong in that fight. It's just that Derek Lewis said that's Herb Dean's fault.
No, he did something wrong, John. He was in the wrong spot.
No. Again, how many times is that guy referee?
Yeah, I know. And he messes up a lot more than people want to give him credit for.
Yeah, there's some mistakes. We all do.
He does do a phenomenal job. I like to give him a hard time. He's messed up a couple of times calling some of my fights. And so I'd like to give him a little bit of a hard time. But in that situation, we did, like John was saying, we did talk about it on our show. And I thought he was in the wrong position, because you and I have always talked about position, John, and where they should be in the open side and this and that. And I wanted to know what you thought. I thought he should have been on the other side because of the right hand and the power of Derek Lewis. But you're suggesting that he wants to see more of the open side of the opponent, of the person who has the more power, because they will tend to sometimes fall backwards or fall forward, but fall, not in the way that Curtis Blades fell. Because it was weird that he had came to that side, and then right before the knockout, he was on his way back to the other side, and then Curtis Blades got knocked out. But yeah, I mean, me and all poking fun, I was poking fun at him, saying like, that he was in the wrong side, which to my eyes, he was. But in all fairness, though, like John, like you guys have all said, it's very hard. It's very hard to get there that fast, and to believe that you can just jump right in there. If I was to put anybody else in there, like John was saying, like an average person, they couldn't sit still. They'd be bouncing around. They would have no idea what the hell they were doing. And a fighter's life would be in danger for sure if you just put a random person in there, because they wouldn't know when to stop it, or they would stop it way too soon. The guy got hit. Oh, stop. People overreact sometimes in situations. These refs are put under a lot of pressure. And in all fairness, I thought he did a great job in the Olenek fight. Was it him in the Olenek fight? Yeah, in the Olenek fight. And then I thought he did a good job with the Derek Lewis fight. I put more of that on Derek Lewis, to be honest. Derek Lewis knew that he was out. Yeah. And I know you're supposed to wait until the fighter is until the ref pulls you off. But Curtis Blades was out. I mean, he hit him the second time. The first time when he went down, he was stiff. And then he hit him again for good measure. So I put a little bit of that on Derek Lewis. I know the rules, and I know what the refs tell you, but I put a little bit of that on Derek Lewis, and I put a little bit of that on Herb Dean. So the two of them together, I think, are a little bit to blame.
Lads, can I talk a bit about electricity in the octagon? How many times would you two guys been in the octagon together? Like, obviously Josh fighting and John, you reffing.
John, you ref my very first fight in the UFC.
Yep.
And then you ref my very last fight in Bellator.
Yes, that's true. I also refereed some fights in between there. But now I was in the cage with Josh probably about 5 times.
See, I just want to know, after someone gets a massive win and then you lift their arm, can you just, like, what do you feel when you're holding them? Like, is there like, what's the electricity like in the arena? Like, I mean, you're holding aloft the champion and everyone's applauding them, and you're taking it all in as well. What's that like?
I'm just totally honest. You're feeling really good for that guy, but you're feeling really bad for the other guy too. You go in there and you really have no emotion, and very seldom. I did so many fights that people ask me all the time, were you excited? No, I wasn't. But I can tell you the one time that I got a charge, and then throughout my career, it was at UFC 40 when Shamrock and Tito Ortiz were going to fight. That was the time that, because of the energy of the crowd, I didn't get a charge, but I realized the sport's going to make it. This is going to go. And I really felt confident at that point. But the one time that I got a charge was Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor walked out, and as he was walking out, I felt this charge, and it was against Aldo, because it was a fight that was really highly anticipated. And I got this buzz that went up my spine, and I was like, what the hell was that, man? That hasn't happened in a long time. So it was it was good because it just tells you, man, you're alive and you're ready to go. And it lasted 13 seconds. So
Yeah.
What about the time you refed? I think it was Chuck Liddell versus your man from Friends.
oh, dude.
Yeah.
John, was that the best atmosphere you'd been in as well? Because like you've been in so many, but was that number one?
No, I've had so many great experiences, but the one that I really enjoyed, I mean, just absolutely stood in the middle of the octagon. Well, maybe not the middle, but more to the side, but stood there and was like, holy Christ, look at this. I had asked for the Mark Hominick versus Jose Aldo fight that was in
The
Toronto.
hematoma.
The first big fight that they had in Toronto is 55,000 people. And they asked if I wanted the main event with George St. Pierre and Jake Shields, and I had ref I think Jake Shields' last 4 fights, and I go, nope, I want that other fight. I think it's a better fight. That's the one I want. And they gave it to me. And Mark Hominick was walking out, and it was important because Mark Hominick, along with a couple of guys, Sam Stout and Chris Hordesky, and they had a trainer that has passed and stuff, but Sean Tompkins was a special guy, and it was so special that he was going to be coming out, and he had never been able to fight basically in his home province. And he's walking out, and it's playing the song, I'm Coming Home, and they've got this like snow coming down with the Canadian flag, and 55,000 people are going nuts. And I was like, this is the coolest shit ever.
And it was a good fight.
Oh, it was.
I was getting goosebumps right there when you were explaining to me the snow coming down and the Canadian flag, and one of my favorite fighters to ever watch was Mark Hominick.
Clean.
I mean, and it's not even so much that he was fun to watch, but if you ever met the kid, he's probably and I hold Frankie Edgar at the highest level of standard. But Mark Hominick is right there with him. Their personalities, their sincereness of who they are as individuals and people just cannot be matched, man. The guy is just an absolute amazing person, Mark Hominick, Frankie Edgar. I mean, Sam Stout and Chris Hordesky, those guys, they're just, if you were ever around them, they're just a great group of kids. And man, you gave me goosebumps hearing that little story there, John. I like that. Thanks. That was awesome.
Guys, what do you make of the progression of the sport itself over the last 25 years? Because in Ireland, it wasn't really big. And then obviously, like, Conor absolutely just blew it out of the park. But, like, could you foresee that this was going to happen? It was going to get this big? Or, like, is it just like Conor sort of slightly fast forwarded it? Or, like, as in, it was inevitably going to get this big?
Oh, there's no doubt that Conor put it in fast forward.
Yeah.
I can remember back when we did the first show ever for the UFC at UFC 72, which was in Ireland. And it was a good show. It had some, decent fights. It had one of my favorite fights was Tyson Griffin against Clay Guida. It was an awesome fight. But you could take a look at all of the people that, in the UK, Michael Bisping was a big, guy as far as he had won the Ultimate Fighter, and he was kind of the guy people were looking at because there was guys before him like Ian Freeman, and he was, well liked, but not the greatest fighter, tough guy, but not this incredible guy. But Conor was the guy. He not only you'll get guys that can talk, and we have a good friend in Chael Sonnen who's one of the greatest talkers there is.
Legend.
But when it comes to the big fight, he never comes through in it. It always seems to elude him, and so Conor was the guy that he talked well and always pointed out. He was kind of honest in the way he would do it. He would point out his opponent's flaws. He would point out their weaknesses, and he would say, I'm going to touch that chin. It's you've been getting hurt. You're going to your left and you're trying to avoid it. And he's saying all these things, and he was accurate with it. And not only did he, do the talk, then he walked the walk. He went out and he performed. And when you can do both of those things, you get people behind you. But it was also his, the phrases that he came up, we're not here to take part. We're here to take over. That fired people up. And he got an entire country behind him at one point that you look and you go, it's just amazing.
Yeah, because if you're not really aware of
Yeah.
like the Irish culture, like a lot of Irish people sort of run themselves down a bit, or they'd never be braggadocious in any sort of way. So when like myself and Ross saw an Irishman talk to talk and walk to walk, like our minds are blown, Ross. And then Ross, tell the lads
Yeah,
what
really was.
Ross, tell the lads what it's like, what it's been like living in Ireland ever since like Connor blew up the scene. Because I doubt the lads know exactly.
So actually over in Ireland, and like every person he went to the lecture wasn't there here. Then White give a speech. They just go, "When are you signing Conor McGregor?" And that's all that was said to him. He then went and knocked out Ivan Bunchinger and became two-time Cage Warriors champion. And his first sort of fight in the UFC, he knocked out Marcus Brimage, and there was the 60 Gs, and everyone was like, that was really, really cool, and people were on board with it. And then people then started like, everyone started becoming their own little version of Conor McGregor. Everyone had, the slick back ponytail. Everyone, like, you walk into a Dublin nightclub and everyone has a waistcoat with a dicky bow on, and it was absolutely ridiculous. You know what I mean? In fairness, I actually think I donned a dicky bow in a nightclub at one stage. It was the thing to do, and like, everyone wanted to tell everyone, "You'll do nothing." You know what I mean? Like that's all people wanted to say, and just like his phrases became an everyday in Ireland. To be honest, it was insane.
Well, here the thing is I don't like to give a lot of. I don't want to pat him on the back too much. I'm not talking about Connor. I'm talking about Michael Bisping. I feel like Michael Bisping, like John was saying, he kind of opened the door, not just for UK fighters, but he opened the door for a lot of international fighters. Because we already had Brazilians, we already had Japanese, we already had Americans all fighting, in Pride, in the UFC, and any other organization, the WEC. There was already fighters that were there that had already fought from those countries. And it was very rare to find somebody like, that could really make a splash from another country. I want to say, what was his name from Australia? George Stephanopoulos or...
George, yeah.
George, yeah. So George, he kind of was trying to make it a little bit of a splash, never really got there. But I'm saying when you're talking about guys like Michael Bisping had the chatty mouth, he was didn't like to be pushed in the Ultimate Fighter. Matt Hamill and him got into it a couple times. There was some things that catapulted him into it. Then the other guy that was never really mentioned is Dan Hardy. Dan Hardy was like the first guy, I think, outside of Michael Bisping that brought that brash, almost Conor McGregor-esque kind of like talk and conversation and post-fight interviews, and the mohawk, the red mohawk, and his fighting style was fun. And he could back it up. That was the other thing. He could back it up. They kind of came before, but what would, to answer your guys' question in terms of, did you think in 25 years where we would be right now? Like Conor sure catapulted it up there. But I think what they saw from Michael Bisping and Dan Hardy was that all we need to do is find one star in every country and we can blow up in that country. And let's just make that person a star. And that's what they've done. Weili Zhang, you've got her now over there and she's just blowing up in China. They're talking about doing more shows in China now. You've got obviously Conor, they're making their way through the world. You got Khabib in Russia. They're making their way through the world, trying to find, one star in every country so they can make this a worldwide brand. And people want to talk about the, I know I'm going to go off topic here a little bit, John, is they want to talk about the Ali Act. But if you implement the Ali Act, now you're taking away the ability to make a star in every country, kind of, because now that champion can go anywhere they want and become a star somewhere else, instead of making stars right there in the UFC. So it's a little bit of a catch-22, I think, by trying to implement a union and all the acts and all those lines. But I think the UFC has found the format for how to build stars in every country, and it started. I gotta say, it started with Michael Bisping and Dan Hardy, and I think you've got a little bit of that Darren Till now. He's kind of taking the place of Michael Bisping and Dan Hardy. And you've got Vettori You've got other guys that are coming up that are kind of like becoming stars by the way that they talk. And that's not over the top, but it's direct and to the point and very energetic for the crowds to support and get behind.
Yeah, I suppose you also have a few boy nationality champions as well. Like even if you look at Izzy, you know what I mean? He's New Zealand and he's Nigeria as well. Kamaru Usman, obviously America. Yeah, I think now if you confuse Ireland and England, the Irish fans will let you know all about it. But I feel like UFC just throws any of the Australia or New Zealand guys on the same cards as same difference, no? And there's definitely a difference there. But you're so right with these different nationality stars. Like you have Ngannou in France, you have like I said, Vittori in Italy, you have Till, you have Amanda Nunes in Brazil. You know what I mean? Once you have all these stars coming from all over the world, I mean, it really does resonate with that home country, and it gets a big interest in there. Like we have Katie Taylor, who fights for what's called Boxer Fights for Ireland, pound for pound, #1 female boxer in the world. I always say she's Ireland's greatest ever sports star, and that includes the notorious one. She's undefeated and she's undisputed world champion, Olympic gold medalist as well. So like, Ireland loves to get behind our own, and I'm sure most countries do, but I think we're just a bit louder when it comes to our own.
Well,
you guys felt
I will tell you guys, the greatest crowds ever are in Ireland.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. We just shared a video the other day of Peter Queally walking out at Bellator Dublin, the last one, and it was unbelievable.
Awesome.
I can't even believe that's real, because you can't even go anywhere wearing a mask these days, and to believe everyone was singing in harmony, it was unbelievable. It was magic. It was magic.
You know, one of the things that Josh is talking about with, you know, the champions from all the different countries, that's what has helped the UFC really expand at this time. You're looking, you go, if you got the females, you got, you know, Weili Zhang, then you've got Valentina Shevchenko, and you've got Amanda Nunes. We're talking about China, Russia, and Brazil. You get into the men, same thing. You know, at 125, you got Brazil. At 135, you've got Russia. At 145, you got Australia. 155, it was Dagestani, Russia. Now we'll see what it's going to be. But you go up to 170 with Usman, who is from the U.S., but Nigerian background. Then you had Izzy at 185. You've got Poland with, you know, Blachowicz at light heavyweight, and then Stipe an American. It used to be all Americans or all Brazilians. Now it is worldwide where these people are coming from, and it has made a huge difference.
Guys, can you explain how come America haven't got like the face of American MMA? I know Chris Weidman was like very recently, but the way like obviously Bisping will be in England, or like obviously Conor here in Ireland, like how come America hasn't got that, like the face?
Too many different sports, too many different sports stars, and not the person who is able to go. You know, Americans are kind of, you know, they're finicky. They want that person who's unbeatable. They want that person who, they don't lose. Everyone's going to lose. I don't care. In MMA, everyone's going to lose. It's not boxing. Boxing, you can be that Floyd Mayweather, and you can have the right opponents that you pick, and you can be so phenomenally technically good and athletic that you can get through a career, you know, managing it and never losing. MMA, there's too many ways to lose, too many varieties in there, and too many things that if you don't cover those bases in your training for that opponent, he can catch you with them. So I always look at it. That's the big deal.
I'm going to agree and disagree with John. Is that
he always does?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with him and disagree with him, though, all in one breath. What it is John was right, is they want a person who is undefeated. They want the best person. But what it is they'll support any other person in the world over an American if that person's better than them. Now, it won't happen all the time, but almost 99% of the time. Like, that's when people, I don't want to get into politics, but Americans, they don't care where you're from. They just want to support the best person, and that's it. They don't care. You don't want to say, you know what? I knew that guy, or I knew who. Everyone, Americans supported more of Conor McGregor than I think as many people were in Ireland. I mean, that's how many more Americans were like Conor McGregor. They didn't care if he was fighting an American. I don't give a shit. They didn't care. They wanted Conor McGregor to win because Conor McGregor was the winner. That's it. They don't care. Americans don't care if you're from America. They care about being affiliated or associated with the winner. That's it.
I did think Chris Weidman was like the one chance of America actually getting behind Americans, and then once he lost, they were like, nah. They were like, actually, Luke Rockhouse quite handsome. I like him too.
if you had to like pick like build your own like Mr. Captain America or Mrs. America, like what would they need to do? Would they need to be like an Olympic gold medalist? Like what do they really need to do? Because I'm sure there's a few Americans checking this out now that want to be the star of America. That like what do they need to do?
They would need to follow GSP's format. Whatever GSP did, they would need to follow that format. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Americans with Floyd Mayweather, they can follow one of two. They can follow Floyd Mayweather's right, where they only tuned in to watch him lose. They didn't really tune in to watch him win. They didn't like Floyd. Like even to this day, people don't like Floyd. But more people bought the pay-per-view to see if they could watch him lose. You could take that approach. Or you can take the GSP Oscar De La Hoya approach. When Oscar, he was charismatic, but very soft-spoken, always said the right thing and the positive thing. People will follow that. But the number one thing that they both had in common, whether it was Floyd Mayweather, GSP, Oscar De La Hoya, was that they won. And that doesn't mean anything unless you win. And I've said this forever. John knows this, is winning solves everything. If you keep winning, people will follow you. Don't worry about all the other little shit. And as you get more publicity, everything that you say will be put under a magnifying glass. So just make sure you figure out what you want to say before you become a superstar. Do you want to be the heel like Floyd Mayweather and Josh Koscheck? Okay. Or do you want to be the GSP and the Oscar De La Hoya when they were, in their prime and successful and growing to be the biggest stars, that the sports have seen? What you have to make your choice. It doesn't, and sometimes they won't take you and accept you, as a nice person. So then that's when you turn heel. John Jones was trying to be that nice person, and it wasn't him. It just wasn't him. So he just said, you know what? Screw it.
Are you sure? Are you sure it wasn't him?
I'm gonna go wreck my Bentley, and I'm gonna go hang out with strippers, and I'm gonna go do that stuff, But in the end, he became the heel, and I think that catapulted him even more than what he was before, in a crappy light. But people now sometimes tune in to watch John lose versus to watch John win. And he's kind of taking that. Yeah, perfect, right?
The perfect example of this and what Josh is talking about is Henry Cejudo. This is a guy. Cringe. Well, you take a look, man. Olympic gold medalist. Okay, yeah. Phenomenal wrestler. He comes into MMA and is knocking people out. He's standing up. He loses 2 times. He beats the very best pound-for-pound guy in Demetrius Johnson to take the 125-pound title. He then goes and beats the guy who was the 135-pound champion in TJ Dillashaw, and it just wasn't resonating with the public. And this guy is phenomenal. He's a great guy, super nice guy. And finally, he goes to that, okay, I'll flip. I'll go from being the baby face to being the heel, and he turns in this triple C and the king of cringe and whatever, but then he leaves. And so he kind of left the UFC in a place where he's coming back. It's just a matter of when and against who. But that's a guy that, he figured out, hey, I'm going to make more money if people think that I'm a jerk. Okay, I'll be that guy that, makes people cringe. But he's the perfect example. Here in the US, it's tough to get over.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I just don't think they have the right form now. I think, well, first of all, there's far too many guys who get the mic put in front of their face at the end of the fight and go, I'll just fight anyone, whoever's next, someone in the top 10, maybe. You know what I mean? Like Chael Sonnen says it perfectly. You know what I mean? You need to pick your shot and you need to shoot it after your fight. It's the one time you get a chance to call your shot, and saying whoever the UFC wants me to fight next is not the answer. You need to pick someone in the top 15, pick someone in the top 10, and once you say their name, egos come into play, and people don't like their name being called out, and that generates a bit of heat for a fight.
Have you guys ever talked to Chael?
We met him at Bellator 200.
Okay. But I'm saying, look with Chael, right? In the situation with Chael Sonnen is that the reason why this bad guy personality came out was he realized he had just got to win. I don't even know what UFC it was. He was telling me the story. he realized he got to win. And then when he got up to the presser, nobody asked him any questions. No one cared. He's like, I'm winning these fights now. He's like, I've had like a 2 or 3 fight win streak. Not one person asked him one question. So he just like, you know what? Screw this. So he just started doing the whole bad guy thing. And within seconds of him doing it in a couple interviews, he blew up. People loved it. And it just catapulted his career into that position where he is now. I mean, you got to think in terms of guys, right? He worked for Bellator. He also worked for ESPN, and he worked for the UFC all at the same time. Tell me what other guy could do that.
You.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like Dana ain't allowing me to go anywhere near the UFC. but it's, you know what I mean? Like it's that thing that he did when he decided, like, one day I'm just gonna flip this switch. I'm gonna go ahead and play the heel. And he did, and everyone knows he's not the heel. I don't know if you guys have ever really met him and talked with him, but he is not the heel. He is one of those super nice, kind of nerdy nice guys, you know what I mean, versus what you guys see in reality. And it's fun, man. He's a really good guy. I love being around him, man. And it's always fun to work, you know, side by side with him.
That's just a couple of more things before we get into Bellator coming back, and I'm telling you, we can't wait for that. But the thing is, right? Obviously, during the coronavirus, like everything got shut down, and then Dana pulled off like the most ultimate masterstroke in creating Fight Island. First of all, creating the buzz about it, but then actually delivering, and then putting on some of the greatest fights that we'll probably ever see. Well, hopefully, there's better ones to come. But like, John, like you obviously know Dana very well. Like, can you believe he was even able to pull this off?
Oh yeah, and the reason why you got to go. Well, this is why and you can go, and he did a whole video thing, and I got pissed at him. He went and did something that he was screwing up during this coronavirus thing. When, you know, Bellator pulled a show, that was back at March 13th of 2020. And there was a UFC in Brazil, in Brasilia, on the 14th. They had that show. They took away the crowd, but, you know, didn't have any testing or anything like that. Exactly. And then you go, and he had the fight with Tony Ferguson against Khabib that he wanted, and that was scheduled for April. And he was saying this fight's going to happen, and he went off the rails in actually going and trying to book it at a location that was basically it was being illegal. He was trying to do it on an Indian reservation. They didn't have regulation. He was going to self-regulate it. The California State Athletic Commission was saying, we will have nothing to do with this. The state of California was saying, we don't want you to do it. It finally got shut down. But from that point, when he went to Florida, and this is before, you know, he had the Fight Island thing. You got to understand the Fight Island thing took place years ago, back when Lorenzo Fertitta, who was the brains behind the UFC, his brother Frank being a half owner with Lorenzo, and they gave, you know, Dana that little section. Then they decided to sell 5% from Lorenzo, 5% from Frank, and 1% from Dana. So it was 11% total to Flash Entertainment, which was located in Abu Dhabi. They got a relationship there. That relationship blossomed, and it was that relationship that was spawned by Lorenzo Fertitta that gave Dana the ability to go back to the Abu Dhabi government and say, hey, is there anything? They had Yaz Island. Yaz Island was being shut down, and they said, you know what? We think we can do something. Let's see. And then all of a sudden, Fight Island came about. You know, it wasn't that, oh, they made an island for the UFC. It was there, but it wasn't being used. And it was that relationship that was initiated by Lorenzo Fertitta. That's what created Fight Island, and it has worked for the UFC today. Look at Lorenzo Fertitta. He was the guy in the background. He wanted to be the guy in the background. He didn't want to be out front a lot. He was the brains behind everything that has occurred in the UFC. When they lost Lorenzo, they lost a ton.
And John, was that back to UFC 112? Was it when Silva fought Maya, and believe it or not, was it Frankie Edgar beat BJ Penn?
That's right. That was the first fight that they had, and that fight occurred in Abu Dhabi based upon that exchange when they sold part of the UFC to Flash Entertainment, and that relationship started to blossom at that point.
Knowledge flex by me.
Yeah, baby. Like that.
Guys, like before we went into like coronavirus and like we were living the coronavirus lifestyle, Myself and Ross, we were obviously doing the show, and so were you lads. And like Bellator will be on the same nights as UFC sometimes, and like it'd be difficult to watch both, yada yada yada. But now that Bellator has now found a home on Friday nights and UFC is on a Saturday night, like how much better is that for the mixed martial arts itself?
I think for me personally, it's just going to help the sport grow. The other thing as well is that we as Bellator, we work for them, but we also understand the importance of not stepping on each other's dicks. And that's really what it comes down to is you don't want to hinder the sport from growing. And people will follow who they want to follow, but we want to give them an opportunity. We want to get them an opportunity and a chance to follow our guys as much as the UFC wants to give their guys and their girls, their female fighters to be followed as well. And so when you're talking about them on us on Friday, like I loved that we were on Thursday night on CBS Sports. I loved it because we knew that it gave fans a day of rest on Friday to go do whatever they wanted, and then tune back in on Saturday to the UFC if they wanted to watch that. So I loved it because if you think about it, right, the only conflict that we would have really had ever with Thursday night was the NFL, and that was on Thursday Night Football. And you have that problem with that situation. But at least on Friday, we don't have that problem anymore. And having two big nights of fights, Friday and Saturday nights, is great for me. The other thing as well is if I'm going to go out, right? If I'm going to go out to a nightclub or do anything, I don't normally go out on Friday as much as I go out on Saturday because I know Saturday I have all day but I have all day Sunday just to rest and lay around. Some friends work late on Friday night. Like it just, for me, Friday night tonight, if I'm going to come home and I'm going to watch something on TV, it's going to be Friday night. And Saturday night is, don't get me wrong, a lot of people will continue to watch, the UFC on Saturday nights. But I feel like it's a good step in the right direction for Showtime to be on Friday nights for Bellator. Saturday night will probably be the UFC or any other boxing event. That's the other thing. Boxing events will generally occur on Saturday night. Showtime boxing might be on Saturday night, which will conflict with the UFC. And the fact is that they will kind of still take some of their viewership away because boxing fans do watch MMA. But boxing fans are more loyal to boxing than they are MMA. And so they will steal some of their fans from their viewership. Whereas on Friday night, we very rarely will have boxing, or you will very rarely see boxing on a Friday night, unless it's a massive UFC fight or a massive football game on a Saturday night, like some of the playoffs this year for football, American football, by the way. They were on Saturday nights. Some of them are on Saturday during the day, during the playoffs, Saturday day, Saturday night. And so unless it conflicts with that, then I think you're going to see Bellator's stardom and star power for these younger athletes that have not been able to get a lot of recognition lately. That now that we have a home on Showtime, they'll start to get more recognition. Plus, it gives all the casual fans an opportunity to see it on Friday, the Bellator fights, and it gives the other fans a chance to see them on UFC on Saturday night.
Yeah, no, it is. I thought it was a great move. Myself and Ross would agree as well because obviously the time zones and having it on Friday night and then Saturday night, and then yourself, lads. Like if you're working a desk at the Bellator event while UFC is on as well, it's just a bit of a mess when you have to go back over everything as well. But no, it's like once Bellator announced that they're coming back, it was just very, very exciting, and like the the way it is here, like for everyone that's gone to a Bellator Dublin event, they've fallen in love with it. Full stop.
That's the other thing is, and I tell people this, John knows this, is that you have to go to these events.
Yeah.
Okay. If you get an opportunity, a chance, you need to go to a Bellator event. You need to go to a UFC event. I encourage everyone to go watch MMA live. You guys have no concept, no clue. The normal fan at home that watches it on their TV box, they have no clue what it's like to be there live watching these fights. It's the energy of the crowd, especially like if you're in Ireland, get the hell out of here, man. Like you'd be missing out on a lifelong experience to tell your friends for decades, your grandchildren, how amazing it is to hear a group of, 10,000 people all sing in unison. Like, come on. These are things that people need to understand. It's one thing to watch it on TV, but it's another thing to be there live in person.
100%.
I actually have friends here in the States that are waiting for the next Bellator event in Dublin, Ireland. They're gonna They're going to get tickets. They're going to fly out there because I've told them you have got to experience it. And they're all just waiting for it because it's something that you just can't explain until someone has been there and seen it. Then you can talk about it.
Yeah, I think when you really think back and look at Peter Creeley versus Ryan Scope in Dublin, Peter Creeley comes out first. Ryan Scope comes out. No one knows what his walkout song is. All you can continue to hear is Zombie playing in the background. Ryan Scope puts it on Peter Creeley, and then in one of the most amazing comebacks of all time, Peter Creeley comes back and finishes Ryan Scope. Is probably one of the greatest mixed martial arts comebacks under the Bellator banner of all time, and he literally blew the roof off the place. He etched his name in Irish MMA folklore history.
Yeah, I would have to say it's probably one of the best comebacks in MMA history, period. I'm not just being that. I'm not saying that because of Homer. I called that fight, and I'm sitting there just in disbelief that Ryan Scope gassed himself out, trying to put him away, and just couldn't find it in his gut to survive the rest of that round. I was in just such disbelief. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. And the other thing as well is I'm one of those fighters that fought a lot in San Jose. And for him to be able to do that in Ireland, in Dublin, he'll never, ever forget that moment, ever in his life. That will be in his mind, probably the greatest moment of his whole life. I mean, outside of probably having kids and getting married and things like that.
His whole career.
Yeah, his whole career.
Guys, obviously we have a lot of Irish people that watch our stuff. Is there something that you can tell them that like Bellator have planned, or something they can look out for the next Bellator Dublin?
Right now, I don't think Josh or I know when the next Bellator in Dublin is going to be. The whole thing with COVID really changed the scope of what was going on and where they're doing it. I think right now they're talking about bringing, the really good Irish fighters that they have signed, guys like Gallagher, BDK, Peter Quealy. These guys are probably going to be coming over in the first half of the year to fight here in the U.S. at what they call the Fight Sphere at the Mohegan Sun, because you got to get those guys fights because, that's, important to keep them going. But they're going to go back there because they, as a company, Bellator loves Dublin, Ireland. They love the fighters there. They have a great relationship with John Kavanagh there and the other gyms that are there, Andy and all of them. It's a special place that I think that Bellator right now, other than Conor McGregor, they own pretty much Ireland, and they have a great relationship with them. So they want to go back.
Yeah, we always joke that Scott Coker runs all those decisions by John Kavanagh before he actually decides what he's doing.
He might.
Yeah, well then he has a seat at the table anyway.
Yeah, and Dana even took notice of that, trying to put Till against Whitaker in Dublin as well. That turned out to be an unbelievable fight, but that he was setting up a really, really good card. But no, Bellator are doing great things over here. They've what would you say, Ross? Well, what's Bellator done to Irish MMA?
Well, I think they've just given a lot of Irish fighters a platform to fight. And put it this way, since Conor McGregor's sort of retired, unretired, and also he's too big of a name to put it in the 3 Arena. They're not going to do an outdoor show in Ireland because of the weather. And then also, we've seen it with Michael Bisping when he fought Dan Henderson. I think it was UFC 204. That they had the fight on at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning British time for the American pay-per-views, and we saw photos the audience were asleep at that time. It was 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. What do you expect? So if you want Conor McGregor to headline a pay-per-view, which of course you want Conor McGregor to headline a pay-per-view, you're going to have him fight in Ireland at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because the pay-per-view boys are still on Vegas time. So it's never going to happen. It just won't.
Guys, you got to make sure there's at least one Irish person on every card, and then you'll have the whole country checking it out. Anytime any Irish person's doing anything from chess to fighting, they'll get a massive support. They just will.
Well, yeah, one of the things the Irish fighters are just guys fighting out of Ireland, because there's a lot. The Pedro Carvalhos, who is from Portugal but fights out of SPG, or Franz Malombo is another one. But the Irish fighters have performed, and you got guys, no one knew who Will Fleury was before, but when Will Fleury goes out, man, he's had one fight where he wasn't able to perform. Other than that, man, he has put on some great fights And so, and Brian Moore, another
His
one.
boxing, beautiful.
Oh yeah, and you talk about putting combinations together, because combinations in MMA start to become a rare thing. And you look at what Brian Moore is doing, he's awesome. He is fun to watch. The Pikeman is someone I love to watch. He is great.
That uppercut is sensational.
Oh.
Sensational.
Yep. Dude, he looks like Canelo when he throws it.
Yeah. Oh, he actually put up a post the other day of him and Canelo doing the same combination side by side.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, guys, let's get into April. You know, Bellator's big return. What do you guys make of the light heavyweight tournament, and who's your early favorite to win it?
Go.
John, I mean, realistically, my early favorite is Nemkov, is the Bellator champion. My early favorite right now is him. He's riding off of a huge win over Ryan Bader, who is also the Bellator heavyweight champ. I think the 3 years, and look, and I'm an Anthony Rumble Johnson fan, like to the top of the top. I'm one of his biggest fans. But he's been off for over 3 years. And to think that he's going to come back and he's going to have a barn burner of a fight against somebody who, even though he's 44 years old, Yoel Romero, but he's been active at 44 years old. And let's be real, he's probably about 32. Okay.
Yeah. Well, when you look at that body, you say 28.
Yeah.
I hate him because of the way he looks.
So no. when you put the two of those guys together, and then the winner of that's going to advance on, and I think it's going to be against Nemkov and the winner of Nemkov and
Phil Davis.
Phil Davis. And so the winner of that fight, but I would say that Nemkov is the favorite. The one thing that concerns me a little bit with Nemkov is that we saw it in the Phil Davis first fight, is that he's extremely good for the first 3 rounds. But as that third round comes around, he starts kind of slowing down a little bit to the point where guys that have great conditioning will push the pace on him and be a little bit more active and wrestle, and make him make him work, make him work too much to the point where the output is not there anymore. And John will speak on this, is that he's ref. Did you ref that fight that he had a long time ago where he was so tired?
Yep. Against Yuri.
And so, John will talk to you guys about that as well. Is that he's got to learn. I think hopefully he's learned during this time on how to conserve his energy or pick and choose his shots on when to be explosive and fast, and when it's the importance is to get up off the bottom, when the importance is to slow down your activity from the bottom if you are on bottom. I think his wrestling, his sambo, his judo, all of that stuff together makes him the favorite. If he was to have a hard time, it would be with probably Yoel Romero out of everyone. I give Nemkov a little bit of an advantage over Anthony Johnson, even though Anthony's one of my closest friends. But I would get, because of the wrestling aspect, I'd give him a hard time. I give Nemkov a hard time against Yoel, because he's not going to be able to take him down. He's going to have to make sure that he keeps his chin tucked and doesn't take big shots from Yoel and not try to over push the pace of the fight. But let's not forget about Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson's long, lanky, fast, way faster than I had ever thought he was until I saw him fight Melvin Manoff in person. He was extremely fast. And it really threw me off, the fact that he was that fast. And his wrestling, his control, and his top position, he would be the next guy that I think is a little bit of a dark horse. But Nemkov, I think, to me, is favored. And then I would say Corey's probably next. And then you're going to go with Yoel and Anthony probably after that, somewhere in there. And then Machida and Ryan Bader, in that other corner. I'm going to lean towards Nemkov being the favorite, though, just to be honest.
I agree with you. I agree with Josh. I think the two favorites, in my opinion, looking at the entire lineup, and I love Rumble. And Rumble can win this thing in 3 fights with 3 15-second knockouts. He's got that kind of power. Okay, let's just be honest. Anthony has that scary power, like what we were talking about with a Francis Ngannou or a Derek Lewis. So he has the ability to touch someone and to put them out of the fight. That can happen at any point, but that's not an easy thing to do. And I would tell you that, in my opinion, Nemkov has gotten so much better. What Josh was talking about, his fight with Yuri Prozeska was in Ryzen. I did it, and he beat Yuri to a pulp. But it's a 10-minute round. And at the end of the round, with 9 minutes and 35 seconds, gone at the round, there's 25 seconds left. He's exhausted. Yuri basically turns him over and then starts hitting him a couple times. The round ends, and he was so exhausted he couldn't get up because he did not know how to fight. As far as he couldn't control his pace, he didn't know when to take those seconds to take that deep breath and then come back. He was this all forward 100%. Let me go get rid of this guy fighter, because that's what had worked for him before this fight. He had never fought that guy that he couldn't get rid of. And then exhaustion was what beat him. And he's learned from it. But Josh is right. He is a fast twitch muscle fiber athlete. He needs to be able to control the pace for him to be able to not get tired. If someone's able to push him in areas, he can get tired. And I think Phil Davis knows that off of his first fight. So I think Phil Davis is a tough fight for Nemkov in the first round. I think on the other side, looking at it, Bader and Machida is going to be a good fight. I think it's going to be a different fight than the first time. I think Corey Anderson is going to get rid of his opponent. And in the end, Corey Anderson, I think, is going to be the guy against Nemkov. And that is a pick'em fight, because they're both, when Corey's able to fight the way he is meant to fight, meaning using his wrestling at times, not being this boxer, not being a guy that's standing there looking for a knockout because he wants to satisfy the matchmakers. He doesn't have to do that anymore. All he has to do is go out and win. His wrestling, Nemkov's wrestling, his stand-up, Nemkov's stand-up, they match up incredibly well. They're both super fast. That's a pick'em fight. I think those are your two finalists.
Nice. I'll give you my quick rundown. First of all, I think the deck is absolutely stacked against Nemkov.
Yeah,
like he's got the absolute murderer's row to retain that belt. Like Phil Davis in the first round, he won a split decision last time. Who's to say if Phil Davis can secure an early takedown in each round, he's a hard man to get up off your back against. To be honest, I think that's almost a pick'em fight. But I would slightly lean towards Nemkov. I think his striking is that bit crisper. In the next Rumble versus Romero, I think Glover Teixeira is still looking for his tooth in the bleachers from the time they fought. Yeah. So, look, I think eventually Yoel Romero's chin will eventually have to give way. I think Rumble could be the man to make his chin give way. I'm really hot on Corey Anderson. Sort of on his way out of the UFC, I thought, him versus Jan Blachowicz was a pick and fight, and I thought the winner of that was definitely had their hat in the ring for best 205 outside of John Jones. I actually know next to nothing about his opponent. I was actually disappointed Gegard Mousasi wasn't in this tournament as an extra. And then Bader versus Machida. I do sort of fancy Machida to get the win again. I don't know. I also feel like there's a bit of pressure on Bader being the heavyweight champion. If he loses, he goes 0-2 in his last two fights. So I don't know. I think he'll be a bit tentative in there, and I don't think you can be tentative against Lyoto Machida. So I think, Machida Anderson, I'll pick Anderson, and then Rumble versus Nemkov, I'll probably pick Nemkov, and then I'm going to go for Corey Anderson to win the belt. I feel like in his whole career he's had doubters, and I feel like he finally has a chance to prove them wrong.
Yeah. Also, it goes to, when you look at the brackets, like the least dangerous side, if you can even call it that, is obviously the Bader, Machida, Anderson, and
least damage Corey Anderson could actually get into the final. Nemkov could get there with some serious damage.
Yeah.
You know what I haven't heard yet? I haven't heard either one of you guys pronounce that guy's name that's fighting Corey Anderson. Go ahead, give it a try.
Yeah. I tried to do it last week. It was so difficult. I was stuttering for a week.
I also noticed you and John, who called the fight, also tried to evade his name. So maybe you should, as the experts, should give it a go. I just call him Yuri Shigidov Dolodov, which is totally wrong. But
I'm gonna give him a nickname. I'm gonna stick with it, man. That's it. That's all he's getting from me.
When the Grand Prix was announced to come back, that was very exciting. But there was talks about a bantamweight Grand Prix coming back as well. Was there was stuff moving and were things about to happen, and it just didn't go through, or is that something to look forward to in the future?
I think it's definitely something you're going to look forward to in the future. I think that what happened was I do believe they were looking towards that 135. They were also looking at 125 for the women for a while. but the 135s was definitely in the game plan as far as what they're doing. And then they made those signings. They got Corey Anderson all of a sudden. Then they got, Rumble Johnson. They knew that was in the back burner. And then all of a sudden they decided, okay, we're going to pick up Yoel Romero because he'll go to 205. Man, we've got to do this. Especially when you're looking at the UFC's light heavyweights right now. If you insert John Jones into the UFC's light heavyweight division, it becomes the best light heavyweight division in the sport based upon John Jones. He's been that guy that's been there, done that, and is basically undefeated. You take him out and put him in the heavyweights, and now you have Jan Blachowicz, who's a great fighter. You've got guys like Dominic Reyes. You've got some other, people in that realm with the light heavyweights. But Bellator has a very good stance in saying, hey, our light heavyweights are better than yours.
I think if you put it this way, John, if you take obviously John Jones out of the 205 and then we're to rank the next best 10 light heavyweights in the world, you could argue Bellator would have more fighters in the top 10 than UFC.
That's exactly it. So for Bellator to say, well, I'm going to do a 135 tournament when I can now really show off the 205, I think they made the right move with going to 205.
Yeah. I also think that move had to be made for a big splash. The fact that they did sign all the heavier guys. Most people will want to tune in and watch the heavier guys fight in the big splash for Showtime to splash onto the Showtime network. Is, hey, we have, you've got Rumble, you've got Yoel, you've got Nemkov, you've got Corey Anderson, you got Ryan Bader, Phil Davis, Lyoto Machida. The name value is there. It's already been created, and these fighters are all new to, a couple of them are new to Bellator. But why not just, now that we're on Showtime, potentially of being on CBS, let's go ahead and just explode into this with a big 205-pound tournament.
And you guys weren't actually at that event, by the way, because we saw the morning combat guys were there, and it was like, oh, you had the B team, you had the A team.
That is exactly right.
Oh my God.
Nothing wrong with Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell. Great guys, but you're talking junior varsity.
You know what? What's it called? I actually love those shows, those guys as well. I actually love morning combat as well. But I was like, oh, Big John and Josh, I was like, a little bit more noticeable, but sure, look, it is what it is. Also, did you guys notice when Mauro Ranello was calling out the 205ers, he was like, and Anthony Rumble Johnson. And then
I love that.
He was like, wait, he's not here. He's like, are you sure? I'm pretty sure I saw him backstage somewhere. That was like an absolute brilliant moment. Mauro was like such a character, you know what I mean? Like he what's called, when it goes wrong, it's almost a bit like Mike Goldberg, you know what I mean? You sort of just have to laugh it off.
I can tell you, Mauro, I talked to Mauro about that. I said, well, you played it off well. He goes, John, I swear to God, I thought I saw him, right? I go, you thought wrong. And so they would have told you if he was there. But I will tell you, man, Mauro Ranallo is a genius. The guy is brilliant. He doesn't turn on that voice or anything. That is his voice. You can ask Josh, no matter where he's at. And he comes up. I know the sport really well, and I've got history in my head. Mauro's the guy that can try to challenge me with that history. He is just brilliant when it comes to the sport of MMA.
Guys,
he wants to do it all as well. Sorry, Basmo.
Yeah, guys, when Bellator is back, it's April 3rd, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken. Is that it? Like Bellator is back. It's like fully up and running, lights, camera, action, expected nearly every Friday, yeah?
Yeah, they're saying for 3 weeks straight, we're going to open up this tournament. And then after that, it'll be 2 shows a month for the rest of the year.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant to hear, lads.
The first show actually has the semifinal of the featherweight tournament between Patricio Pitbull and Emmanuel Sanchez, and that is going to be a rematch that is going to be just fire. That should be an incredible fight.
Yeah.
I really believe outside of AJ McKee, this fight is to see who is the number one fighter in the world. You've got AJ McKee and you've got Patricio Pitbull, but Emmanuel Sanchez is right there trying to make that push to secure whether he's the number one guy in the world. I don't know if he gets it done. I think Patricio is really coming to his own. But right now, to me, in the world, Patricio Pitbull is the number one featherweight in the world. Everyone's going to say Max Holloway. How is Max Holloway the number one guy in the world when he's not even the number one guy in his promotion? So you can't say the two things. I can match up. John and I talk about this all the time. I can match up fighters to where my guy wins every single time. Just like people that are saying, well, Max Holloway is. You're trying to match up a fighter that could potentially beat our guy, but that's only because you're trying to match up the guy you think that has the best tools to beat him. But if we were to say champion for champion, my champion, which is the Bellator champion, which is Patricio Pitbull, I think he beats Volkanovski. He beats him, I think, 9 times out of 10 times if they were to fight. My personal opinion. But I look at Patricio Pitbull, the way he's come into his own with his wrestling, and I've trained and grappled with him on the ground. He is physically just probably one of the strongest guys I've ever grappled with, and very technical. Trying to move his legs is ridiculous. No way trying to pass that guard. He is phenomenal, and he obviously has the punching power of a guy who fights at 205 and heavyweight. You know, when you put him in the cage against guys that are his weight, he just absolutely destroys them. And we saw that with Pedro Cavallo. So if you're gonna match those guys up, AJ McKee to me will be the biggest threat against Patricio Pitbull. Manuel Sanchez sure is going to pose some threats as the fight goes on, but you've always got to be afraid of that power of Pitbull. But right now, to me, and I'll continue to say this, and it's very controversial, but Patricio Pitbull is the best 145-pounder right now in the world.
There you have it, Basmo. What do you think of that? Now, like, breaks my heart would you say that, because like me and Max Holloway are best mates, but
yeah, and then obviously Pitbull knocked out Michael Chandler as well, who like people can't keep out of their mouth in the UFC as well. But lads, I'm just looking at the time. I know we kept you here a bit longer than expected, so we'll sort of like wrap things up now just shortly. As we invited 2 lads on, because myself and Ross are massive fans of you lads' show. You know what I mean? We've been watching for a long time, and it's unbelievable to get you on. It was like it was perfect to bring you on when Bellator announced it as well. Also, it's episode 300, and what we said off the air as well, Ross, that we were after being let know that it's confirmed that we will be on the UFC 259 countdown video, which is a massive achievement for myself and Ross, because like we're just 2 lads trying to live our lives, and we're just trying to do as good a job as you lads, and it was just a very proud day. So to have you guys on to sort of share the moment is brilliant, and everyone who tunes in as well. But like obviously UFC 259 is going to be an unbelievably massive card, and we're really looking forward to it. I want to give you all the opportunity to pick one fight. Obviously, someone's going to pick the best one first. But like, I want you to tell me what fight you're sort of looking forward to there, and what you're sort of expecting from it. So, if does anyone want to go first, and then
we'll let our guests go first, Basmo.
Yeah,
go ahead, John.
John.
So UFC 259. Who's on that card?
Yeah, it's
Oh my god.
You know. For me, it's Peter Yan.
I knew you were going to say that.
I want to see the Peter Yan fight, because look, as many people want to talk about how great he is, I haven't seen quite enough of him yet. And I've watched him fight, but he's looked so good and so dominant and so technical in so many different areas. And the reason why I want to see more of him, though, as well, is that Bellator just signed Magomedov, and he's had one fight in Bellator, and he's the only guy to ever beat him. Just like Magomedov, his only loss has been to Peter Yan. So the 2 of them together is the 2 of them. I want to see more, so I know more of how to talk about Magomedov for his fights in Bellator. But Peter Yan to me and Aljamain Sterling, Aljo, is the 2 of them together should make for a very good fight in terms of Aljamain Sterling, though, with the speed, the power, the aggressiveness coming forward. But the way that Peter Yan handles other people so technically it really makes me want to tune in to watch and see how he takes away the athleticism of Aljamain Sterling. How does he do that? Because for me, that was something that throughout my career, sure, I was athletic, but I fought a lot of guys that were way more athletic than me. And I was able to get wins, but I could never go back and critique and say how I did it. And I want to see how he does it, because he doesn't look athletically gifted at all. When you look at his body style, you look at the things he does, but he seems to find ways to slow other fighters down, to make him fight his style of fight, to take away their advantages. And that's the ones, and I've always wanted to watch the littler guys fight, because they're the most technical. I love watching the 2 smaller guys or the smaller athletes fight, because they do fight more technically than the bigger guys. So to me, that's the fight that I'm looking the most forward to.
Big John.
I agree that's going to be a great fight, and I love Peter Yan, but you cannot take anything from the Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya fight. That is the fight. that is a fight. And it's a lot of what, Josh was saying with the Aljo versus Jan fight. It's about technically good. How technically good is Israel Adesanya? He is so good. Can that technical prowess, can that ability that he brings to the cage take away the power punching opportunities that Blachowicz tries to create? And if he does get touched, can Blachowicz put him out? We have seen in kickboxing, and I did some of Israel's fights in kickboxing. We've seen guys be able to hurt him in that kickboxing range. Well, with a 4-ounce glove and the power that Blachowicz, he can put, Israel out. But you look at his last fight against Paulo Costa and the way he handled a guy that's a heavy puncher, the way he handled his ability to take away all the tools that Paulo Costa brought. I think that's just going to be a incredible fight to watch.
Roscoe.
First of all, shout out to Johnny Boxing. I don't know if you know this, Josh, but Peter Yan's boxing coach is actually an Irishman, so big shout out to him. For me, I'm actually going to say the return of DC, the original DC, Dominic Cruz. He's coming in against Casey Kenny. I thought it was a very strange matchup when it was made. I thought, putting Dominic Cruz in there, I thought he'd maybe get a bigger name or a higher profile fight. But I want to see, can Dominic Cruz get the job done? Does he still have anything left in the tank? And I'd love to see him maybe have one or two last big paydays against maybe a Jose Aldo or a TJ Dillashaw, or maybe even a Cody Garbrandt rematch. I'd be interested in those. So I'm interested to see what DC Dominic Cruz has left in the gas tank.
If I had to pick one, I know I should definitely mention the potential GOAT. Amanda Nunes taking on Megan Anderson, but Thiago Santos against Alexander Rakic in the light heavyweight division. That is, I'm just expecting pure fireworks off that, lads. But I do want to reiterate, thanks a million, guys, for coming on the show. I know you're very busy, guys. Also, have you ever done a podcast together on someone else's show?
No.
There we go. We popped the cherry. We popped the cherry, lads. But
first time for everything. One last quick Bellator related question. Bellator 2021 ends. Do we see James Gallagher in a title fight, and will he walk away with the belt?
We see him in a title fight. I don't know. And do I see him as the
this
champion?
is sort of yes or no section here.
I think yes or no section. I don't know.
I think it's pretty simple. You got a top 5 that you're looking at, and Gallagher's probably part of that, but he might be the 5th guy in that. And so he's going to have to get past. He's not going to get that shot right away. Obviously, we've got Pettis coming against Archuleta. That's going to be the next one. But there's a couple of guys in there that you look at their style, Patchy Mix against Gallagher. That's going to be a very interesting fight if he can get that sign. And I honestly think they're looking at putting those two guys together. But then you've got Magomed Magomedov. That dude is a stud. And I did his fight that he lost to Peter Yan. And I can tell you, it was a great fight. He is good. So can he get that in 2021? He's got to get a big win. He's got to either get a big win against someone like Apache Mix, maybe a big win against someone like a Magomed. He gets that, he'll get that title shot. But
there's a lot of guys there. There's guys in that top 135-pound weight class that aren't even on that list.
Yeah, Josh Hill.
I mean, you've got Leandro Higo. You've got and then
Bandejas.
Bandejas is in there.
He's not there right now. But then you have who's the one that Magomed just beat? He just beat him.
Matos.
Matos is just as good as well. I mean, he wasn't able to get, he got out hustled and outworked against Magomedov, but he's up in that talk and that conversation. 1 or 2 wins, he's going to be right there in that top 5 as well. So you've got guys that are in that mix that are not even on that list. James Gallagher's got his hands full. I mean, it's really going to come down. Do I think he can do it? Yes. Do I think he can get to the title? Yes. But he's gonna have a rough road. The other thing as well is physically he's not that strong. He doesn't look physically that strong, but his submission game is very damn good. He doesn't get enough credit for it. Everyone thinks he wants to try to be a Conor-esque type fighter, maybe in the brashness and the talk, but they don't fight anything alike. They're nothing alike on the feet. They're nothing alike in their styles of fighting. Maybe they're talking in conversation and maybe a couple tattoos that look similar. But other than that, they are nothing alike. James Gallagher is a different type of fighter than Conor McGregor, which is good for him. You know, he's phenomenal on the ground, but he's got his hands full with guys that are phenomenal on the ground as well. Magomedov and Patchy Mix are the two that come to mind directly that I think will make for amazing fights against him because of the grappling aspect of it all.
You also got to figure out he's young. He's still so young. He's got so much growth potential in him, and he can get, you know, all these things are going to come with time. And right now, one of the things I will give him credit for, you know, he came up with SBG. He's been out in the States, in Kansas, which no one wants to go to Kansas. I'm telling you right now. Okay.
Well, see James Krause, people might.
Well, James Krause, you know, has got his school, Glory. James Krause is a phenomenal coach, and Gallagher's been there training, and he's been learning things from them. They've been learning things from him. That's what he needs to do. He needs to expand. It doesn't mean that he's leaving SBG. He's just going and expanding his, you know, knowledge of the sport, opening up that toolbox, putting a couple things in there that eventually he fights one of these guys. He's going to probably need one of those tools, and he's going to have it in place.
And shout out to Kevin Kroom, who's part of that team fighting this weekend.
Yeah. Also, it's great to see Bellator are going to be implementing the ranking system as well. So it'll just be a lot easier for people to just really understand everything. But I'll just give him a 2 cents now, lads. I do want to thank you again. I love the way you always have your show ready and out on Monday. So when I'm about to work, like you're the first one that I check out every week, and I really do appreciate you doing the great stuff. Not just for like myself, but everyone who really enjoys it. Your chemistry is brilliant, and I think that really helps Bellator do well as well. Ross.
Yeah, no, guys, thanks a million for coming on. When I said you guys were the number one podcast in MMA, I really meant it. I have like a little ranking order. I was like, I listened to A&M first, then DC and Helwani, and then I listened to Morning Combat. I don't like listening back to our own show, although I do it just to make sure that the sound is all good and all that. But I don't think anyone is that push that they like to listen back to themselves. But you guys are killing the game. It's great to have inside of the third man in the cage, like John, especially when, you know, there's a questionable decision, you know, just even go back to the weekend, Vieira versus Kunitskaya, just the way you break down the sort of what the rule set is. And then Josh, obviously being a fighter yourself and obviously being high level and a champion, it's good to see from the fighter aspect. So it is the perfect mix.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. You guys, if all your listeners, you guys understand that you guys are in Ireland, so the time change, we drop to you guys on Monday morning, but we drop early on Sunday mornings, almost always. Usually like 6 to 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. So if you guys are in the States, you know, that's the time that we drop here in the States, and then we drop for you guys Monday, like you guys were saying. So yeah, check it out. Weighing in on YouTube. We're on all the audio platforms as well. If you guys don't get YouTube, or you guys have a hard time accessing YouTube, we're on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, all that stuff. So you guys check us all out there as well. So, but yeah, YouTube for sure. We're on there. And John, man, I tell you, we see it. It's great to hear other people say we are the number one podcast. I love it.
both Barry and Ross, thanks for having us on, man. We're fighting nerds. We can do this all day long. That's the one thing that when Josh and I got together, it was real simple, because when we started just working together in Bellator, we would stay up till 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning just talking fights, and then 8 o'clock in the morning we were back and we're talking fights, and it's just what we love to do. So thanks for having us on. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. So like, share, and subscribe, and as always, stay energized.